Customer acquisition cost. What is a new customer costing you to acquire? We're going to dive into that today. I'm Frank, and I'm all about helping business owners and entrepreneurs start and grow their lawn care business. Make sure to subscribe, like, and hit the bell button so you're notified of my future videos. What's going on, lawn care pros? Today we're going to talk about customer acquisition cost. So I'm often asked, what's the best way to advertise my business? And everybody wants to know, how do I get more customers? That's really a loaded question because there's so many different ways to advertise your business. You can advertise with brochures, you can do flyers, you can do postcards and business cards, and you can do online marketing like Facebook ads, Google ads, and like Nextdoor app. And it's going to depend on the type of business that you have. So it's not a one way fits all kind of a thing. So if I'm doing like postcards and that's working for my business, that might not necessarily work for you, because I've actually heard many people say even online that I tried EDDM and oh my God, I spent all this money and it was horrible. It didn't do very well for me. But I can tell you that EDDM works for a lot of different people, a lot of different businesses. So you really got to focus in on what's best for your business. And so today we're going to dive in on something that's going to help us to determine what's the best way to advertise for you, for your business. And that's figuring out what's your customer acquisition cost. So what that means is, how much money am I spending in my business to acquire a customer? So that means, if I go and do some postcards and it costs me $100 or $200, right? How many customers did I acquire when I spent that $100 or $200 or even $1,000? Did I spend $1,000 and acquire 5 customers? If I did, that means that it cost me $200 to acquire each customer, right? So is that a good cost? That's what we want to kind of determine today. And again, that's going to kind of vary for your type of business as well, because your customer acquisition costs might be a little bit higher if you're doing a higher ticket item. But today we're going to talk about mowing and maintenance type of business, right? So if you're doing mowing, you're doing flower bed cleanup, mulching, that kind of thing, shrubs and all the other stuff that's, pertains to the maintenance side of the business. Let's dig in on that. So if you have a customer and that they're spending, $2,000 a year with you, and maybe that's your average, right? So what is a good number to acquire that customer? Would you say that if I spend $100 to acquire a customer that's going to spend $2,000 in a year, is that a good cost? I would say absolutely that's a good cost, right? So that's a good amount for you to spend. So basically we're kind of reverse engineering and trying to figure out, if I spend $100, is that worth, $2,000 in revenue? And really that's going to be determined in your type of business as well, because you have to figure out, that $2,000 annual revenue, what's my profit out of that? So when I was doing mowing in our business, our retention rate was around 96%, right? So that means that customer is going to be with us the following year, and our lifetime value of the customer obviously goes up from there, right? Because once you acquire a customer, you are going to not have to spend any more money as far as advertisement goes with that customer. So if I spend $200 and they spend $2,000 with me on the first year, another $2,000 the second year, and so on and so forth. And I know in my business, the average lifetime value of a customer is, X amount, because the way I figured that out is I know that the lifetime average time as far as how long a customer is going to stay with me, whether that's because they're moving and relocating, is, 5 or 6 years, right? So if somebody's going to stay with you 5 or 6 years and they're spending $2,000 a year, they're spending $10,000 to $12,000 throughout the whole life of that customer, right, with you. So is it worth for me to spend $100 to acquire that? Absolutely, right? So that's what we want to figure out. And we want to figure out in your business, what's that number? And the way you're going to do that you already advertise, right? So if you already advertise, what I want you to do is start really, honing in on the numbers. I want you to, every time you, put out a flyer, or, you do EDDM, or you spent money online, I want you to understand and know how much you're spending, right? And then you also want to figure out, how many customers did I acquire with that spend, right? And then you're going to go and chop that up even further, right? So if I spend X number of dollars with Google, I want to know how many customers did I acquire from Google. That's why you have to track things. That's why everybody says it's so important to track things, right? Because you don't want to just put that in a pool, right? Because if you do that, you really don't know, is Google really working for me, but the flyers are not. So if you do like EDDM and it's, it costs you $1,000 to do EDDM, and you acquire 2 customers, right? You know that it costs you $500 to acquire that customer. But now you're doing Google ads and you figure out that, oh my God, I spent the same amount. I spent $1,000 and I acquired, 10 customers. So I'm spending $100 with Google. So now which is better, right? Obviously Google, in this case, in this scenario, is going to be better. But you have to find out for yourself what's working for you as far as, the different type of advertisement that you do. So, business cards, you put those out, how much it costs to, print that. And you also have to factor in how much did it cost me to distribute it. So if you're doing it yourself, you have to kind of figure that out. Like, what am I spending to, put those on the doors and that kind of thing. So you have the labor side of it. Then you want to add the labor side to the cost of print. And then now you have the total amount. Let's say you spent $1,000, you did your business cards, you got them out, and you acquired 10 new customers from that. So our acquisition cost per customer is $100. So that's probably a really good deal, especially, if they're going to stay with you a long time, which, that really depends on you, on how well you treat the customer, how well your job is. So on the flip side of things, if you're spending $1,000 on the same marketing and you only acquire, let's say, 2 customers, then that's a $500 per customer acquisition cost. And I can tell you from experience, when it comes to the maintenance side of things, that's definitely not a very good cost of acquisition. You don't want to spend that $500 to acquire that customer, because the number is much, much lower. And it's going to vary from one business to another, but I can tell you 500 is definitely not the right number. So you're really going to have to figure out what that number is for your business, and what you feel comfortable with as far as what you're spending. I can tell you from experience, as far as when I was mowing, my customer acquisition cost was under $100. So I pretty much knew that I'm going to spend $100 or less to acquire each new customer. And that's kind of something that you want to keep in mind and kind of hone in on and see where your customer acquisition cost is. And let's see if we can get that price down for you too. So the next question might be, how do I figure out, where the customers are coming from? So you obviously want to track them. And the best way that I found as far as the tracking goes is when somebody calls in, we always ask, how did you hear about us? And they'll tell you, yeah, I got you through the money mailer, or it was Google. And as far as online advertisement goes, there's ways to track that as well. But again, the simplest way is asking. And when you do that, you want to put that into your system so you know where those customers came from. Now, the system, as far as tracking it, could be as simple as an Excel sheet, or if you have a CRM, or if you're using Yardbooks or Real Green system, whatever type of system you're using, you can track it within that system. But again, if you're not using that kind of system, you could do it as simple as an Excel spreadsheet. I hope this video was helpful for you. Make sure to comment below. Let me know if there's any subject matters you want me to cover in future videos. Or maybe you want me to dive in a little bit further on this subject matter. Let me hear from you. See you next time, lawn care pros.